Fellow Canadians, mes chers amis canadiens. Well, welcome to the 1980s.
Good morning. It's a Liberal majority government in a landslide. A funny, lopsided landslide. A dangerously lopsided landslide. And you'll see the figures in detail, and they tell an unhappy story of the possibilities of confrontation in this country as Premier Trudeau welcomes the 1980s. Not a single solitary Liberal in British Columbia. Only 2 Liberals west of the Lakehead. Almost in Ontario and Quebec alone, the Liberal machine was very close to winning the majority there by themselves. A full recap of last night's dramatic, I suppose it was, election after the break. Off the top, I must tell you that British Columbia, in fact the West, did not matter a jot, tittle or damn after the polls closed in the Maritimes, Ontario and the province of Quebec. It was merely a question then of how much. And it really is not a very happy day for the political future of Canada as such at all whatsoever. The one good thing that can be said is that it is a majority government. The man who vanished 9 months ago and came back and swept into power has got no excuses. He's got a clear majority. Here are the standings as of this morning's count. Liberals, 147. They gained 33 from the Tories. The Tories, 102. They lost 34 seats in all. The NDP, 32. They're up 5 seats. Social Credit, zilch. They lost all 5 seats. And this was the man, Fabien Roy, who brought down the government. Now we'll look at the British Columbia standings. Quite simple. Liberals, none. Tories, 16. The NDP, a round dozen. And that accounts for the total 28 seats in British Columbia, and which caused, among other things, Mr. Trudeau to make the strangest of statements last night that he may be consulting the opposition in the West about what is to be done to keep the West happy. I'd like you now to see the percentage and the numbers in the national voting which took place yesterday. For 4.5 million votes, the Liberals picked up 147 seats. The pollsters were even low in some of their estimates, but they picked up an extra 5% of the votes. The Tories, 3.2 million. They're down a chunk, almost 4%, and for that they got 102 seats. On the next figure, we'll show you why. Tommy Douglas last night on CTV said there's got to be proportional representation, because with 1.9, almost 2 million votes, the NDP only got 32 seats. The popular vote was not up nearly as much as they expected it to be, but it was certainly respectable. So there you have it. 45% of the vote brought the Tories 147 seats. 32%, the Liberals, 147 seats. 32% brought the Tories 102 seats, and almost 20% brought the NDP only 32 seats. Now, on this morning's program, we're going to show you and give you many things. I think we can now run by you, or put up on the screen, the winners in the 28 seats in British Columbia, just so you'll know for sure who won, who lost. I don't think there is a single solitary recount coming in British Columbia. The votes were very clean enough to avoid recounts, I think. Can I see this? Can I see the winners in British Columbia now? Robinson and Burnaby, no surprise. Next one, Huntington and Capilano, no surprise. Let's take them quickly. Or not too quickly. Next one. What's wrong? More? By my count, we've got 2, maybe 3. I will do them later. Small problem. Actually, all I wanted to give you, and I think I didn't make myself perfectly clear to my production staff this morning, is I just wanted the whole 28 names. Although it's interesting, you know, because once the election came to the Manitoba border last night, and certainly when it came to the Alberta border, you know, it was kind of over. And it was difficult to keep up a torrid interest, except for one's own local interests, in the ridings in British Columbia. What I'm going to do now is, after this break, we're going to listen through the English portions of Mr. Trudeau's victory speech. The moment the results began to come in from the Atlantic provinces, it was very, very bad show for the Tories. In the Atlantic provinces alone, the Tories won 7 seats, the Tories lost 5 seats, and the Liberals won 7 seats. After that, it was predictable. Mr. Trudeau took his time before appearing in front of this Chateau Laurier jam-packed crowd, you know, and he made not a bad speech. Neither did Clark and neither did Broadbent. But first of all, the Prime Minister-elect is on the podium last night, and here's what he says, I think, any moment now.
Fellow Canadians, mes chers amis Canadiens. Well, welcome to the 1980s. It's fitting and proper that less than 2 months into the decade, the people of this great nation should have been called upon to express their national will in a general election. Every member of Parliament from whatever region, in whatever party, is a depository of that national will. And the Canadian people have given to the Parliament they have just elected the mandate to speak for the people of Canada, and it's the only national body which has that mandate, to speak for all the people of Canada. And that is well, because as we enter this decade, we know that there are problems and opportunities in the world and in Canada. In the world, we take pride in the fact that we have many friends. Friends in the Commonwealth, friends in la francophonie, friends at the United Nations, friends in NATO and other such alliances. We're also very proud that our greatest friend of all is also our closest neighbor, the United States of America. But we do not forget, nor does the world, that Canada is geographically situated between the two superpowers, and that Canada, like the rest of the world, are very interested in the preservation of peace between these powers, and we see that as an important aspect of our role as of the world. In Canada, too, this decade will be full of problems and equally full of opportunities. We must remind ourselves today, on the eve of this, on the night of this general election, that Canada has been, Canada is, and Canada will remain more than the sum of its parts. You know, springtime this year was a little bit early, and Valentine is a few days late, but I thank you all, and I thank particularly my friends, my many friends in the Liberal Party, for that joint Valentine you are sending to me. I am glad that you have received mine these past days, though the messenger sometimes took a little bit of a detour. I am sure you have all received it. To liberals everywhere, I want to say a gigantic thank you very much. You have worked in this election against incredible odds. You have come from behind 6 or 8, 9 months ago to become a party of government, a party for the 80s, and that means an immense amount of dedication, of devotion, of faith, hope, and yes, even of charity towards me, and I want to thank you all very much for that. Just a word to those candidates in our party and indeed in other parties who were defeated tonight. I am sad indeed that we have lost very many good men and women who would have been ready to devote themselves to the service of their people as members of Parliament. I can just say that victory often follows defeat, and I wish them courage, and I hope they will come back. I want to say a special word about the present Prime Minister, Mr. Clark. I think if you are like me, underneath this partisan spirit that you are just showing, and which I sometimes showed too, I think if you are like me, you probably have a grudging admiration for Mr. Clark. He has shown He has shown immense dedication to his country. He has proved in this campaign that he is a man of great stamina, but more important, he has shown courage in face of adversity. And I want to say tonight very seriously that such warriors should not be counted out of the history of this Parliament or indeed of the history of Canada. Mr. Broadbent, too, has shown with his selfless with his many thousands of selfless workers across the land, he has shown that with deep beliefs and faith in the country, you can make a mark on the history of this land, and certainly he will in the history of this Parliament, because if as I expect we are called upon to form the government, I will intend to seek the advice of the opposition parties, particularly in those areas of Canada where, as Liberals, in spite of all our efforts, we have remained weaker than we would like. I'm thinking of the western provinces. Our party has always prided itself in being a national party, and I think in this election we can be proud that about 1 voter out of 4 in the West has supported our party. But still, that is only something on which we can build, and we must make every effort in this Parliament to ensure that the government of this country is the government of every part of the country, and that we will govern for every part of it. Because what I ask of those who sit in the opposition, I ask no less of our own party, that we put the country before ourselves or our region, and that we put the good of all Canadians first and foremost. We want also to make sure that not only the country is strong, but that it is effective. And that means also having a social policy which will take into account that great Liberal principle of helping first those who need it most. So as it was written by the poet, I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep.
Of course, and regardless, congratulations to Liberals this morning for the majority government. In a couple of days, however, the euphoria... I might do it better with a microphone this morning. Of course, it will be a couple of days before the euphoria wears off of the very congratulatory Liberal victory. Of that, there is no doubt whatsoever. But it will then sink in just how particularly divisive the potential of this election shows the nation. One hopes that it isn't. One hopes that Mr. Trudeau can find a way of consulting the West other than talking to his senators, which is his only official contact, you might say, with the West at this particular moment. Mr. Trudeau, too, was very gracious and seriously gracious to the Prime Minister, Joe Clark, now on his way out. Mr. Clark, I think you'll find in his victory speech at Spruce Grove, was just as gracious and remarkably stern-jawed about the whole affair. Here is what Mr. Clark told his unhappy supporters in his Western headquarters last night.
We've observed many of them. Clark's going up on the stage, Conservative Party band in the background, his wife Maureen with him, of course.
I want to say that we have conducted a national government and we have conducted a national campaign of which we can all be deeply proud, as I am deeply proud. I naturally regret the result tonight, regret particularly the loss of several good members of Parliament and some excellent ministers of the Government of Canada. But that is what democracy is about. The people of Canada have exercised their democratic choice, and we naturally, as believers in democracy, as active participants in democracy, as people who want to maintain that system which has served this country so well, we naturally accept that result and accept the defeat that our party received at the polls tonight. I should take this opportunity to express my congratulations to the Liberal Party for the success of their campaign and to wish them well. And to wish them well in dealing with the very serious problems and the very great potential of an immense and a very fortunate country. And they can be assured that we as a national party will continue our work to build the future and to build the unity of this country. Now I simply want to thank all those Canadians across this country who worked so hard for us as a government, for us as a party. I want to extend my congratulations to every member of Parliament of whatever party who has been elected tonight. We have a Parliament now that we must make work, in the interest of Canada. That is going to be the determination of the Progressive Conservative Party as a national party. There will be some disappointment here tonight. I naturally feel it myself. I was honored to serve my first 6 months as the Prime Minister of Canada. I accept the decision of the electors of Canada tonight. We will conduct ourselves with responsibility and with an eye to the future and the growth of this country. And my friends, we have a country to build together, and that will remain the dedication of all of us who serve in this great national party. Merci beaucoup, bonne chance, thank you for all of your support, and good luck to the nation. Good night.
Former Prime Minister Clark showing grace and decency in defeat. Maureen McTeer, of course, one might expect his wife in tears as she leaves this stage here in the Spruce Grove Auditorium. Here's Lowell Murray, Senator Lowell Murray, who ran the campaign for Joe Clark. Lowell, what mistakes did you make in this campaign?
Well, look, it's much too early to start reflecting on what mistakes were made. Frankly, I think that Joe Clark ran a superb campaign, and I can't think at this hour of night what we might have done differently in the campaign that would have produced any different result from the one we had.
Was it image that defeated him, Lowell?
Oh, I don't think so, especially. I think that it came down to some of the pocketbook issues, the 18 cents and so on in rural Ontario and in the Atlantic provinces.
If you had to guess, would you guess that he'll stay 2-3 years?
If I had to guess, I'd guess that he'd stay and he'd stay strong and that his party would rally around him and that his policies would be vindicated.
But do you think he'll ever be Prime Minister again?
Sure. Why not?
You really believe that, Lowell?
I wouldn't have believed 6 months ago that Pierre Trudeau would ever be Prime Minister again.
All right, that's an indisputable point. Thanks very much. Senator Lowell Murray, as you saw. Here's Jim Gillies. Jim, the chief policy advisor to Prime Minister Clark. Jim, during this campaign, people were calling you Genial Jim the Optimist. You always told us you were going to win.
I thought we were.
You always told us that, even at the lowest moments. What went wrong, Jim?
Well, I don't know. I think Mr. Clark fought a very fine campaign, as fine as could be fought. Obviously, the people of Canada didn't accept the analysis of the problems that the Conservatives put forward. They didn't agree that we had to deal with the energy problems the way in which the Conservatives wanted to do so. They apparently didn't agree that it was time to have a different type of fiscal approach, and consequently they've shown their determination tonight to have a new government.
Jim, you're a man from Ontario. How are you feeling about Peter Lougheed tonight? Many people are saying privately, I can't get them to say it in public here in television, that Peter Lougheed and Bill Davis defeated Joe Clark.
Oh, I don't think so. I think that any person that's in government in Canada today has to deal with the provinces. The premiers have their obligations to their own constituencies, and one of the great processes in government is working out agreements whereby both the federal and provincial people can work together to solve the problems of the nations. No, I don't think there's any feeling that the premiers defeated Joe Clark at all. Not at all.
When will the Conservative Party get a new leader, Jim?
Well, I think the next leader of the Conservative Party will be Joe Clark. I have no doubt that the people of Canada tonight have a better understanding, a better feeling, and greater respect for Joe Clark than they've ever had before in their lives. He fought an outstanding campaign. He put forth the issues very, very clearly. He has shown that he's a man of great determination, great love for his nation. He fought the great battle down in Quebec. The Constitution of the party calls for a leadership review automatically at every annual meeting. There will be one. Joe Clark will be the next leader of the party. And I'm convinced he's a young man, a man of determination and courage, that he'll be Prime Minister of Canada again.
The other two were Senator Lowell Murray and Jim Gillies trying to put a good face on it. You want my opinion? Clark will not lead them in the next election. Trudeau will be here for 3 years. Broadbent has no reason to hold his head down with a total of 32 seats. His victory speech comes up now.
I would also like to say, as leader of the New Democratic Party of Canada, I am immensely proud of the fact that in this election we have won more seats and have had the highest popular vote than ever before in the history of our party. I naturally regret the loss of some outstanding members of Parliament who have served not only the New Democratic Party well, but the people of Canada well for many years. They are going to be missed in the House of Commons. I want, at the same time, to congratulate Mr. Trudeau as the new Prime Minister and wish him well. We have, as every Canadian knows, a magnificent country that has some difficult times, and we have Mr. Trudeau as the Prime Minister, and I wish him well in his difficult task.
And difficult times there will be. Mind you, computers or not, you finally got to get to a piece of cardboard to find out what the detailed breakdown is across the country. Not going to bore you with the details, except to point out the parlous split. Is he there? Which line is he on? John Crosbie. Just a minute, I'll put you down and put you on the air. John, are you there?
I am.
Well, John Crosbie, you must be a sad, unhappy, almost politically broken man this morning.
Like hell.
Well, give me the Crosbie comments.
Well,
On what the people of Canada did last night in Ontario and Quebec to the rest of us.
Well, life goes on, and it's going to be a very interesting spectacle, Jack, because this is the first time a Liberal government has ever followed a Liberal government. And where they always said, you know, Tory times are hard times, it's only because we followed Liberal governments. Now they're following themselves, they're chasing their own tail, and it's going to be very interesting to watch.
Be a little more specific. They will not put in your 18-cent excise tax Will they have to come to the near settlement you had with Lougheed to get the oil for Ontario?
Well, I'll be very surprised if Mr. Lougheed would agree to any arrangement that would not give him what we were prepared to agree, because since we agreed upon that with Lougheed, world prices for oil have gone up again, as you know, from, well, it was 27 something when I was bringing the budget in, and now it's 32.65 a barrel. The import subsidy is huge, so Mr. Lougheed is not going to agree to any less, certainly. But
You
the
mean
interesting
since...
thing will be to see what are they going to do about revenue. There's $3.5 billion there, and the oil excise tax was $2.5 billion, and there are another $1 billion in other increases, regrettably, but it had to be done if we're going to reduce the deficit. So what are they going to do? I don't see very well how they could bring in an excise tax on gasoline. I mean, even the Liberals wouldn't have the gall to do that.
No, I don't think so.
Increase other taxes, so it'll be interesting to see which one.
Are you telling me you negotiated a deal with Peter Lougheed with the price of oil a barrel at around $22, $23?
No, I said when we did make that, when we did...
Oh, the 4, 4, and 4.
Yeah, right. At that time, the international price was $27 and some odd cents. Today, it's gone up another $5. So I mean, he's going to be even more adamant that the arrangement that we reached would be the minimum that he will accept.
Is it not a fact, John Crosbie, an experienced politician, that you misjudged the tempo of Canada in that this was not and perhaps never will be the time to tell people what lies ahead with 40 or 50% inflation in the next 4 years, as you had the guts or the gall to do?
Yes, but I think that there's a lesson in it that the public doesn't want to be told unpalatable facts. That's certainly true. But at least we can, in the next 4 years, we can be critics, reasoned critics, with a clear conscience, because we try to square with the Canadian people, and then our conscience will be clear. And I hope that the government will be able to deal with these problems, and we'll help where it's reasonable. If they're doing the right thing, we'll have to try to help them. Other than that, of course, we'll certainly point out the alternative.
Just let's look at the results, though. 147 Liberal, 102 Tories. They're up 33, you're down 34. Did that not shatter you last night? I mean, you didn't expect anything like that, surely.
Well, we're naturally very disappointed, but Jack, so far as I know, there's never been a successful political campaign yet based on trying to persuade people that they should pay more for something, or that they should accept a tax increase. If the budget had been, say, 3 months ago, before the campaign started, 3 or 6 months, 3 to 6 months had passed by before there was an election, then I think the budget would not have been an issue. But it was too easy for the opposition to pin down the 18 cents a gallon and hammer that home, and too complicated to explain what else was in the budget.
It was you that made it too easy. You could have dodged that debate.
Well, we could have brought in a Liberal-type budget if we had chosen to do that, a political one, forgotten the future of Canada. But I'm glad that we didn't choose to do that. I'd sooner be going this way than to have pulled the wool over the eyes of the Canadian people.
One final question to John Crosbie, the Minister of Finance. A lot of people were saying if you'd been running as leader, you'd have walked in despite the budget. Will you run for the leadership of the Conservative Party in the near future?
Well, that's completely academic, because I'm going to support Mr. Clark as long as he stays there. If he chooses to leave, well, I'll reassess the scene at that time. But I think that's a lot of exaggeration in that. I think he showed himself to be very, very courageous, and I'm supportive of him. And Jack, before going there, could I just congratulate Pat Carney there?
Good.
She won in Vancouver-Centre there over Art Phillips. I'm really delighted with that. I thought she was going to, and I just wanted to congratulate her.
Thank you, John Crosbie. We'll see you on the campaign trail. Who knows when?
That's right. I'm sure that you'll still be there because you're going on forever.
No comment, John, and that's not for publication. My thanks to John Crosbie. Thanks, John.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye now. Take a break. As I was saying before we got John Crosbie on the line, despite all the computers, you finally finish up with a piece of cardboard worked out by hand to tell you what's going on across the country. I just want to give you this. I don't like charts and graphs anyway. Let's go to the Manitoba border. 2 Liberals, no change. 5 Tories, down 2, this is in Manitoba, and 7 NDP, up 2. So that's 7 NDP in Manitoba, 5 Tories and 2 Libs. Then we come to Saskatchewan. Zilch for the Liberals. 7 Tories, they're down 1. 7 NDP, they're up 1. Then we come to Alberta. Guess how many Liberals? Zilch. Jack Horner will now officially go to the Senate. He'll be the consultant for the West. 21 Tories, no NDP. Then we come to British Columbia. No Liberals. 16 Tories, they lost 3. NDP 12, they gained 4. Let's see if I can tell you the ones they gained offhand. The Libs, of course, lost the centre with Carney to the Tories. Cowichan and Malahat in the Islands. Manly took it for the NDP. Kootenay East, Kootenay West, and Kamloops Shuswap. 3 of those went NDP. Later, if we have time, I'm going to run all the results past your nose. But to brighten up the program a little bit, Monty, let me tell you a little secret. I was on a panel last night. You didn't see me on the panel except a little bit after 8 o'clock with some distinguished gentlemen from the East. There was Dalton Camp, who seemed to be holding back for some reason. He's not looking for a job. I don't know why he held back. Tommy Douglas, who, of course, for whom I have a great admiration. A guy called Crispo, an economist, very good indeed. And Don Jimison, the professional Liberal, the guy who was bounced in the election, then bounced in Newfoundland. Don't know what job he's got yet. Can't remember. Anyway, I was sticking in the knife from time to time to try and waken up this panel. One of the knives I stuck in very early on in the afternoon, Vancouver time, was that 3 new leaders for the next election. We know Trudeau's going. Dollars to donuts, Clark will go, because the Tories devour not only the young, but they're old, and they're young, and they're middle-aged. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Broadbent, a long-suffering, patient man who didn't really want the job this time, gone as far as he can go. 32 seats, very creditable. He can retire or be changed for Bob Rae with some dignity. Anyway, I want you to see this exchange. I forget precisely how it starts. They're calling me in from the East. You think I was 30,000 miles away in Tokyo, but I'm actually still in a part of Canada called British Columbia. And just watch this little exchange.
I hope the Conservative Party has learned some lessons from the past. I think the caucus stuck with 1 leader too long, even Baker. And then the next caucus didn't stick with Stanville long enough. Here, here. And it's up to this caucus to learn the wisdom of that. The other thing you have to say is because of my last contribution to the Conservative Party, which was leadership review, nobody has to busy themselves with that consideration until the next annual meeting.
They're talking about
and
Clark's
the party
future.
will accept the judgment and wisdom of the caucus in that decision. And if Clark wants to stay and he has enough support in the caucus, he's good for a number of years.
I think we've given Jack Webster enough ammunition to bring him back in. Come on in, Jack.
Come on in firing, Jack.
I'm beginning to realize that I truly am 3,000 miles away. When I hear Dalton talking about the caucus, if they wish to support Clark, will have the wisdom to support them, Dalton was the guy whom, if my memory serves me correctly, invented the term wimp. Now, it was the wimp in the shadow.
I call on everybody here, all these journalists here, to deny that.
Dalton, oh boy. I cannot see how you can seriously say that Mr. Clark, who muffed the defeat in the House of Commons, no doubt about that, and that Mr. Clark, who has been slashed down to nothing, can face his caucus and expect to go on for another 4 years. What Don Jimison might tell us now, if I can inject what might be a note of levity into it, I think Justin's about 8. And maybe in the 1990 election, Justin could run and we could start a dynasty.
Jack, I can answer that for you.
Western Canada.
Let me answer that for you by saying that how many times...
We were not brainwashed by, if I may forgive, you may forgive my expression again, the Eastern media mafia.
Yeah,
I'm not going to be brainwashed by the Western media mafia either.
I'm not sure that you can hear us, Jack. Jack, we're trying to get a word in edgewise.
Can you hear us there, Jack?
I don't believe Jack can hear us.
I don't believe he can.
No,
I don't think Jack has heard anybody in years.
Can
you hear us?
Very bad noises in Western Canada.
Can you hear us?
Jack, can you hear us?
I was going to say, Jack, with the same note of levity that you used, that, you know, there's only one man who's retired more often than Trudeau, and that's you. Every time I go out, you tell me it's the last year you're going to be on. So maybe you got a dynasty going there as well.
Jack, when you're talking about who invented names, words for Joe Clark, weren't you the guy who pilloried him on television over image?
I did not. That
be
is
beaten
a
by
lie.
your image?
That little man, the tiny perfect columnist with the Gucci shoes, Fotheringham, said that I was the highest paid bully in the country. Jeffrey Stevens, what are you laughing about back there? Jeffrey Stevens said that it was the best performance Clark ever had, and they should use it on every television show in the country. They didn't even run it on the CTV network, you know. That's how much they're interested in the viewpoint from the West. Now, when Trudeau was on, I've never seen Trudeau so up or so sharp. He was so nice, I suspected he was going to win the election, to be quite honest. But I
have the best in all of us, Jack.
I have bullied politicians. I have never pilloried them.
Can I ask Jack a question?
Certainly.
Jack, I listened to you on the television with Pierre Trudeau.
Yes.
And I noticed at one point that he said that $8 a barrel was all that the oil companies ought to get. And that the rest of it, you know, was buckshy and they shouldn't be allowed to get that. I was wondering why you didn't ask him why during his regime they paid the oil companies $12.75 a barrel.
Tommy, here he's
more.
getting a wee bit bad. He came up to $12 a barrel. There's no doubt about that. He mentioned briefly windfall profits, but he did not go beyond that. And when I slung it back in his face, vote Liberal and get cheap gas, he came back. You know how Pierre can come back. No, not quite. But he made it perfectly clear that it's going to be an awful lot cheaper with him. But what I didn't say to him, which I should have said, what are you going to tell Peter the Red?
Well, I'm willing to make a wager. It's not going to be much cheaper.
No, so am I, I'll tell you that. I said to him, as a matter of fact, go on.
Jack, Dalton wants to know how many seats the Liberals are going to win in BC.
Well, before
I think he wants a bet.
I'll bet him. How much will I go? $5.
Oh, boy.
A Scotsman? My gosh, it's a shame.
The last of the
Now, what's the bet, though?
I'll give you 10 for 5 that don't get 3 seats.
I'm on your side.
Are you saying 2 or are you saying 1?
I'm going to say the Liberals will not get 3 seats on the West Coast.
How
10
about
for
6?
5.
I don't think you've got any takers. I don't
what
think
about
you've got any
Dalton
takers here.
Well, we're so profoundly impressed by the knowledge that you have of the whole thing that we're all frightened to death to argue with you about that.
Well, now, if you'll just listen to me for a moment, I'll give you the precise breakdown.
Yeah, okay.
There are, in case, it doesn't really matter anymore. The 28 seats in the West Coast couldn't matter a
Jack,
damn.
it matters a lot. I'm in the office poll for 151.
Think nationally instead of parochially, Dalton.
All right, Jack.
Quite a performance, I'll tell you. One gets the feeling that they don't really care about the viewpoint from the West. But maybe that's just one of those things. I thought it was funny last night. Watching it this morning, I didn't think it was funny at all. Now what am I going to do for you? I'm going to give you some more recap from last night, and we're going to give you the 28 ridings next. If the machine works this time, we'll go right through the 28 ridings so that the people in British Columbia can see, in fact, who was elected after the break. Let's take a quick look at the results in British Columbia. The 28 seats here. Robinson, Sven and Burnaby, no problem at all. We wiped them all out. Huntingdon, the Tory and Capilano, again no problem, a walk away. Wenman, a natural in Fraser Valley West. Mark Rose back in Port Moody Mission. Next one. Pauline Jewett of the NDP. Eakins, the old brigadier, didn't do too badly, but he wasn't going to win. The next one. Chuck Cook back again. Gordon Gibson. He was just a little more than 1,000 behind, but that probably ends Gordon Gibson's political career provincially and federally. Tom Siddon in South Delta. Nobody came near him at all. He has a total plurality over the opposition. Benno Friesen, an institution in Surrey White Rock, 6,000 clear over the others. Pat Carney, see that? 15,428 with 241 polls in. His lead at her lead at that particular time was 1,500. Johnson and Phillips neck and neck. Carney made it. Margaret Mitchell was thought to be threatened by Art Lee. Not so. Margaret Mitchell in for the NDP. Ian Waddell for the NDP. Simmer had high hopes. She's in a good frame of mind. I don't think she cared if she won or lost. Waddell, NDP in Vancouver Kingsway. In Quadra, Bill Clark. Pierce, a reasonable showing. And Bush. Bill Clark back again for the Tories from Quadra. John Fraser, walk away, as one expected. Caribou Chilcotin, Lon Greenaway of the PCs made it again. Fraser Valley East, old Alec Patterson, solid backing, majority 4,600. Next one. This was an upset when Mr. Rees of the NDP dumped Cameron of the Tories. That was widely predicted, turned out right, and was one of the NDP gains from the Tories. Again, another one, Sid Parker beat Graham, the incumbent PC. That was again predicted, again happened, another gain for the NDP from the Tories. Here's a third one, Christensen, the name is, Lyle Christensen of the NDP. Just about 500 or less, but he beat out Bob Briscoe in Kootenay West. The Kootenays went NDP. In this particular one, Dancer was the new Tory candidate this time, I think, or the old one. Anyway, he won it, walked away with it, 6,000 odd. King for the Tories in Okanagan, Similkameen. McCush was supposed to be in trouble from both the Liberal Beckott and Patrick Archie of the NDP. He wasn't. He won it, easy. Frank Oberle, the first British Columbia result in. Oberle, again, a solid, easy walk away for Oberle of the Tories. Skinner, Fulton, that's the guy who knocked off Big Iona Campagnola. Back in again with a much bigger majority than the last time. Skelly Ray of the NDP walked away. Solid NDP country. This was an upset. Jim Manley, minister, 15,000 against the Tory and the Liberal. He is very close to a plurality. The defence minister, Mr. McKinnon, 22,000 against the NDP. See the fight between the Tories and the NDP in Victoria. Very much like what the provincial scene might be. That's easy. He's the Minister of Defence and he won it. Next one. That's the lot. On the telephone now, I have the victor in Vancouver-Centre. Can you put up the Vancouver-Centre figures that we have? Is that telemation available? I'd like to see that just before I talk to Pat Carney.
So would I.
Matter of fact, Pat, we'll have that in a moment. Shall I say congratulations?
Thank you.
And I'm saying that querulously. Shall I say congratulations? Do you really want to be a backbencher in the Tory government in Ottawa?
Well, there's 16,000 votes that says yes, I do.
And what about the one vote of yourself? You too say yes, you do.
I think it'll be a real challenge. This is my first time as MP, as you know, but I'm particularly worried about what's going to happen with a government with no representation from the West. And I think it's important to have strong Western MPs to represent us.
What did you think of Trudeau saying last night that he might have to consult the opposition from the West about these things?
Did he say that? You know what it's like being a candidate.
No, he said last night we may have to, because of this business, to consult the opposition from the West, because while the East succumbed to the reappearance of Mr. Trudeau in all his form, maybe you don't know, but there are 2 Liberals in Manitoba, none in Saskatchewan, none in Alberta, none in BC.
Yes, I take personal pride in that last measure, that there's no Liberals left in BC.
I think you're entitled to.
I think it's very dangerous to have a government elected in Eastern Canada when Western Canada is the most economically advancing part of the country. And I'm sure that's why the East elected Mr. Trudeau and voted against the West.
What is your biggest single economic concern? Is it the fact that Trudeau will not be able to make a deal with Peter the Red in Alberta?
I think that it would be very hard for him to make a deal with Peter Lougheed. And I don't see any sign any of Pierre Trudeau's past measures that he will do anything about inflation. I think that he will just continue to spend money and continue to run up deficits and continue to impoverish the rest of us. And at the same time, he will not. I think he'll find a very militant and truculent Peter Lougheed, and why shouldn't he? Mm-hmm. The whole concept that the West should receive, less than half of world prices for its major resource, while we have to pay higher than world prices for Eastern Canadian goods.
Well, it's certainly going to be a tough parliament ahead, and the Liberals, however, I don't think can afford to be too arrogant, Pat, when you look at how the country, 73 seats in Quebec they've got, 53 in Ontario and 19 in the Atlantic provinces. And that, of course, gives them the majority by itself.
Yes, but as you say, none in the West.
None in the West. Now, here are the latest figures I have. I can't put them up on the screen, apparently. You got, after 234 out of 255.
Okay.
Carney, oh, there we are. 241 out of 255. Carney, 15,428. Mm-hmm. Phillips, 13,979. Johnson, 13,811. So therefore, at a quick guess by me, you had a lead of 1,500 votes with only 10 polls, so you are, of course, automatically, certainly, most assuredly in as the member for Vancouver-Centre.
Good. I'm very pleased with that, and I'm very grateful to all of the voters of Centre who...
Did you hear John Crosbie send his...
He turned a Tory MP to Centre for the first time in 22 years. I think that's a major accomplishment. We were the only, apparently, riding to take a seat away from the Liberals in all of Canada. And I think that...
Well, congratulations. Did you hear John Crosbie talking to you this morning?
Yes, my son is watching you. He's taking the morning off from school. He won in his school debate yesterday. He won as for the Conservatives, and so I won my seat and he won his. And so we're a pretty happy family.
Now, you and I are old friends, Patsy. I want to ask you a question that you just won't answer. You right?
I'm sure you'll ask me lots of questions I won't answer, Jack.
Clark can't last, can he? He's got to go.
There's no sign of that. I'll give you an honest answer. There's no sign of that at all in the party. He has, shown himself to be very courageous. I think everyone has respected him. He is still the best manager of people in the party.
But there's a lesson to be learned. If you were a Tory watching it last night, or as I put to Crosbie this morning, you can't afford to be honest with people. Tell them the truth and they'll throw you out in your ear.
Yes, I heard you say that. And it's true, because we are going to all pay energy prices, higher energy prices. We are going to pay, for the incredible...
Anyway, Pat, you won't have to bother with a cabinet post. You'll just be able to learn your business as a backbencher. I thank you for being available on the telephone this morning.
Thank you.
And would you please hold on? Dale Hicks of the News Hour wants to talk to you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I shall now go to break. Thank you. Now you're going to meet a man called Fraser, Perot, Barrett, Robinson. In other words, I'm going to give you little slices of the interviews we had last night with them in their appropriate circumstances. And Perot, Fraser's first. I asked him if he was broken-hearted, John Fraser.
No, I'm not heartbroken. I knew we were in a tough election, and I didn't think that they would do as well as they've done, but they did it, and there it is. And I've been in opposition before and been pretty effective there, and I know more now than I did then. We'll keep them on their toes.
Let me put this to you very plainly, John Fraser, widely respected in the political field by all people in all parties.
I can't hear.
John, is it not a fact that you were too honest with the Canadian people, that you were too honest? You predicted 40, 50% inflation. You laid it on the line 18 cents on excise tax. Too tough and too honest with the Canadian people.
Well, I think what we did is that we got defeated just as we brought a budget down, which for the first time in decades faced reality. And it's pretty tough to explain a budget when the other fellow is just going around saying that, well, maybe energy's going to cost more, but it won't cost as much under us as it will under the Tories. That's really all Mr. Trudeau said, outside of double tracking the CNR. And I did him up one better than that. I said we'd triple track it and move it all east. So, but that's the kind of election we were in. Central Canada wasn't in a mood to face up to some of the things that we think the country's got to face up to, and we took a beating. Now, I think what is important is this, is that the facts haven't gone away. The reality hasn't changed.
Yeah, looking back now, though, you should have delayed the budget. You should have avoided the confrontation. Something. Made a deal with the Socreds.
Jack, in hindsight, you can always say we should have done something different. And I've no apologies. We did the best we could. We called it as we saw it. I've been in politics for a long time, and the cry I've always heard from the public is, why don't the politicians level with us? Well, we did, and we got pulled down in the House of Commons just as we were leveling, and we didn't have time to explain the thing satisfactorily, and we didn't have time for people to start to see that the budget would actually do some good for the country.
Did you hear Mr. Trudeau say that because he had no representation west of the lakes, that he was going to consult the opposition? Do you believe that's practical, or is that just double talk?
Well, I don't know. I sat opposite Mr. Trudeau for a number of years, and I never saw in Mr. Trudeau much propensity to consult with anybody except himself, and I don't take that very seriously. He hasn't done very well in the West. There is a real problem here, and I think it's going to take a lot of good sense on the part of a lot of people's parts to make sure that the wipeout in the West that the Liberals have suffered, and the fact that the West will continue not to have any representation under a Liberal government, we're going to have to deal with that with some patience and some consideration.
I hope we don't hear any talk of rising separatism or a resurgence of some of these kind of fringe parties, eh?
Well, I don't think fringe parties do much good, but I think that you're going to have to face up the fact that a lot of Westerners are pretty upset about what's happened, and if you walk down the street and listen to people, it's not a healthy situation, and as I say, it's going to require responsibility on everybody's part.
Now we go to the one official Liberal. Well, a few other senators, but he's the only one we ever see around. What's his name again? Ray Perot. And I forget what I asked him. Oh, Trident Promise, the Trident Promise. That's what I asked Perot. We'll make sure the money comes for Trident now. Is that a commitment?
We're going to keep the Liberal commitment that I helped put in place in the first place, and whether or not there's a Conservative member there or any NDP member doesn't matter one bit, Jack. We're going to work.
It's nice of you to answer my question almost. What do you think of Mr. Trudeau's line that he's going to seek advice from the opposition in the West? Does that put your senatorial nose slightly out of joint?
No, it doesn't at all. It just indicates that we have a Democratic leader interested in consensus. I worked with him in cabinet for 5 years, and let me tell you, Jack, he was the most democratic leader one could imagine. And, you know, despite the suggestion that he's a dictator who never consults, I hope he consults with a lot of people to make sure that Western Canada and the country's well served.
One last question, Ray, and you and I are old antagonists and old friends politically and all the rest of it. But it is going to be kind of difficult for him, isn't it? You would agree with me that 2 years down the road, when the Parliament starts, whenever that is, every potential new candidate will be fighting for recognition, and that he will step down a year before he goes to the next election. That's what he told me.
Yes, I would. This is purely a personal opinion, Jack. I think probably he'll be there for 3 years, and then we'll have a leadership convention, and probably a new leader would want to be confirmed 6 months after that.
So he's a pro tem prime minister.
He's going to be. I think he'll serve pretty well the term.
Ray, best of luck. You'll need it in the West.
Thanks very much, Jack.
He is a pro tem prime minister. Guess who turned up at the NDP last night? None other than wee Davy Barrett. So I put it in Davy's ear that he's dealt behind closed door with Trudeau. How are things going to go on the 85% of the OPEC price in Alberta?
I think, Jack, without being too cynical but realistic, as I know the Liberals and Mr. Trudeau, that he will probably adopt a very similar position to the Conservatives. A lot of people voted against the Conservative position, but both Mr. Trudeau's government and Mr. Clark's share the same philosophy towards the oil companies. That was my experience when we were in government and we had the battle over our natural gas prices. So I think that the Liberals will probably come close to having the same policy as the Tories.
In other words, they'll have the same oil prices less the 18 cents excise tax.
Fairly close to it, Jack. They'll do some cosmetic surgery to make the Liberals' position a little more palatable, but With all due respect, Joe Clark's position was very honest. I didn't agree with it. I agreed with Ed Broadbent's approach. Pierre Trudeau did not say his position, and I believe that his position will be very close to what Clark's was, which is pro-oil company.
Well, now, you must be very pleased by sweeping the Kootenays, Kamloops, and Cowichan and Malahat, eh?
Well, it's very sweet. BC had a very good, clean campaign.
Well, it won't be long till you're campaigning province-wide again. Maybe a year or 2 or 3?
Well, it could be sooner than that, Jack. The government has a mandate to government. They have a mess on their hands in terms of their own internal problems, and cabinet ministers have been criticizing Bill Bennett publicly and somewhat realistically behind his back.
Dave Barrett, the eternal campaigner, never misses a chance to slip in the knife. Thank you, Dave Barrett.
Okay, Jack. See ya.
I've been known to slip in the knife myself now and again. I had my little joust with the youngster from, where is he, Bunbury? Sven Robinson. And I'm deadly serious about this first question to Sven Robinson. Hello, Sven. What's your timetable to become Prime Minister?
Oh, well, maybe 3 or 4 elections, Jack.
Okay, tell me what you want to tell me.
Oh, no, I just wanted to say hello and thank you for that excellent show that you did, Jack. It was very, very good.
It was a mistake. I thought for sure Mobby the Conservative was going to wipe your face.
I know you did. That's why I was so pleased.
Or Doreen Lawson would take you.
Yeah, no, we're back again. We doubled our majority.
Yeah, that's just terrific. What are you going to do for us? Well, you got no clout in Ottawa. You're not a minority government.
The voice of the people of Burnaby will be heard loud and clear.
Now, if I get in trouble with BC TV and commit a few offenses, can I find sanctuary in your house?
You can have sanctuary in my home anytime, Jack.
Especially
Don't bring your sheep with you.
No, just come myself, because after all, I could be deported at any moment, you know.
I know. With that accent, I wouldn't be surprised.
Sven, you've done very well. You're now how old? 21?
What's that?
How old are you now? 21?
No, I just turned 18, Jack.
Just turned 18.
How old are you? Have you hit 75 yet?
No, I'm just coming up to Tony Parsons' age, 62.
Oh, very good. Well, retire to your sheep farm in peace, then, Jack.
Well, God bless you, and I'm sorry that the NDP didn't campaign as a Social Democratic Party, but it got confused with the Liberals, and that's why you didn't form a majority government.
Well, we're going to give them hell, Jack.
Good luck, Sven, and best of luck. And remember, watch your P's and Q's or I'll be down your throat like nobody's business.
Thanks, Jack, I will.
A bright boy with a future, even though he is an NDPer. What do we do now? I've got Pepin and Marchand and all these people. I don't think we'll bother with them. It's going to be some time before the political situation develops. What do you say we go to the phones and you can scream at me and I'll be very nice and gentle with you after the break. Camera 2. Call number 1. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Keep it short.
Yeah, Trudeau's glib statement of all of Canada shows he wanted Liberals, but he proved he doesn't need Western Canada at all to keep him in power. So we'll have to see what crumbs he will give to the West. It just shows Quebec with their 72 seats, though, that it is more than they got from all the Western of Canada.
They got 53 in Ontario, 73 in Quebec, and 19 in the Atlantic provinces.
Right, and he doesn't need the West at all.
2 in Manitoba. He does need the West.
If we'd gone solidly conservative, we still couldn't have made it with the control that the East has.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, please.
I'd just like to say a few things. First, I'd like to say I'm glad that Pierre Trudeau got back into office, but I think he'd find it hard to govern the country when he's not represented by his party and half of the country.
True, ma'am. You're dead on. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Webster.
Sir.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'd like to thank you for your brilliant coverage.
Not brilliant, adequate.
Yeah? I thought it was fantastic.
My coverage of the campaign was good.
Yeah? Especially your talk with the CTV boys back east. I thought that was beautiful. I haven't laughed so hard in a long time.
Yeah, and I didn't laugh this morning when I saw it.
No, you're absolutely right.
Not so funny, you know.
No.
However, we'll see what we do next time.
That's right. You're a brilliant voice here out in the West. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Go ahead, please.
Hi, Jack. I was just wondering if you could explain something to me. Is Alberta not as unionized as BC? Is that why they've gone solid conservative?
No, not the case. 20 years ago, Alberta was an underprivileged province whose wage rates were about 60% of the wage rates in British Columbia. Since Prosperity Oil and the Americans have taken over the state, they are now quite heavily unionized, not as heavily as we are.
Well,
But that's not why they went conservative. No, they went conservative because they have a strong provincial government, the Alberta Energy Corporation. They are in the middle of a boom, the likes of which we have not seen for some number of years. They're a very prosperous province.
So in other words, the Conservatives are handling that province okay?
So it would seem. Lougheed can't keep his cabinet ministers, but he runs the government with a rod of iron. Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Now that the Liberals have their majority in Ottawa, how do you see the constitutional issue going when Trudeau has to discuss this with Claude Ryan?
I'll tell you, it's going to be very tough. He will go back. He was not very keen on the Pepin-Roberts report. The Pepin-Roberts report agreed with a number of provincial premiers, especially on the House of Federation in Ottawa. I think that Trudeau will have to go for some reform of the Senate to at least give representation on a provincial basis on a party standing level to the voice of the provinces. He cannot go through 4 years with Senator Perot et al. Speaking for British Columbia. That's quite intolerable. I think that once the referendum is over, I think he'll take an active part in the referendum, whether Ryan likes it or not. He can speak as the federal leader in Quebec. And I think once that referendum is over, Trudeau will, if he can, will try and make some constitutional agreement with the provinces on a reformed Senate and the enfranchisement of the French and English language across the country.
Thank you, Jack.
It's going to be very tough. One more short segment after the break. Go ahead, please.
Hello. I'm rather interested in the popular vote.
I gave you it earlier on. I'll give you it again this morning. 4,200,000 libs. No, 4,500,000 libs, up 5%. The Tories, and they got 147 seats. The Tories, 3,200,000. They're down 3.7%, and they got 102 seats. The NDP, 1.9 million. They're up 1.3%, and they only got 33 seats. 4.5 million, 3.2 million, 1.9 million. That's the national popular vote. Okay, bye?
When you break that down into Quebec and Ontario.
Can't break it down into Quebec and Ontario. In British Columbia, however, the Tories got 260,000 for 41%. The NDP got 215,000 for 34%. And the Libs got 140,000 for 22.9%. So the Tories lost 2.5% to the NDP, precisely and accurately. Thank you, sir. The standings I've told you. I'll tell you them again in case you just tuned in. 147 Liberals, 102 Conservatives, 32 NDP. Liberals gained 33, mostly in Ontario. The Tories lost 34, mostly in Ontario. The NDP picked up 5 in the prairie provinces. 5 in Ontario they've got, 7 in Manitoba, 7 in Saskatchewan, and 12 in BC where they got a gain of 4. The fact remains is that the Liberals do not have any seats in the Yukon, the Territories, British Columbia, Alberta, or Saskatchewan. 2 in Manitoba only. Boy, oh boy, it's going to be a tough 4 years ahead. Thank you, sir. Time for one more call, I think. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Yes, ma'am.
I am a true-blooded Canadian. By the cracky, I'm on the warpath this morning.
Well, I gather you don't like the election result.
See, a majority government formed before it even hits the...
Before it hits the border, before it hits the Manitoba border.
You better believe it.
You could see from the CTV panel last night they couldn't care less about British Columbia.
Well,
they had their election.
And I know what I'm talking about.
Thank you, ma'am. One more? One more. Where from? Kelowna. Good morning in Kelowna.
Look here, I'd like to make one mild criticism against your programs and the one this morning.
Please do.
Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I would like to criticize your way of dealing with this morning and in the election campaign. I think you're mostly fair and I think you have very good programs. But one thing I think you have done, you've done nothing to enhance the image of Mr. Clark, and your criticism continues after the election.
That is not correct, sir.
I'm sure it is correct. And there are...
Honi soit, as we say in Ottawa, honi soit qui mal y pense.
Well, I'm not one of those either.
Thank you. Evil be to he who evil thinks. After the break. Did you have time to vote yesterday?
Did I ever?
Who's on tomorrow?
We have Rafe Mayer with us tomorrow morning.
That should be good, the new Minister of Health.
Yeah.
Webster at 9 a.m. precisely.
If you are like me, underneath this partisan spirit that you are just showing, and which I sometimes showed too, I think if you are like me, you probably have a grudging admiration for Mr. Clark. He has shown... He has shown immense dedication to his country. He has proved in this campaign that he is a man of great stamina. But more important, he has shown courage in face of adversity. And I want to say tonight very seriously that such warriors should not be counted out of the history of this Parliament or indeed of the history of Canada.